Once again, everyone is very welcome to this webinar today, organized by the Africa IP SME Helpdesk. Again, my name is Andrea Iori. I'm the project manager of the Helpdesk. That is a project implemented by the European Union Intellectual Property Office, the UIPO. The topic of today is about e-commerce and counterfeiting in Nigeria and South Africa. This webinar is part actually of a cycle of webinars on the theme of enforcement and IPR that started the last 30th of October. So during the first webinar, we discussed trademark enforceability in East Africa and ARIPO countries. Today, we're going to focus on two of the biggest economy of Africa, Nigeria and South Africa, and we will be discussing the main issues and about e-commerce and enforcement. And then there will be a third webinar to complete this cycle and to cover a little bit the whole aspect of the continent on the 13th of December, where we'll be discussing custom recordal in West Africa. So you are welcome to listen to this interesting topic today. But before we get into this program, I would like to present the project that I manage and let you know what are the services that we offer for free to our European SMEs that are interested. So, first of all, the International IP SME Helpdesks is a network of project that is financed and funded by the European Union and operates around the globe in different areas. As you can see in this map, we have a help desk in covering several regions from Latin America, Europe, India, China, Southeast Asia, and Africa. And talking about us, that we are the Africa IP SME Helpdesk, we are a new funded project, as said, implemented by the European Union Intellectual Property Office, and we work within the framework of a bigger program called AFRIP, Intellectual Property Rights and Innovation in Africa. That covers several aspects of IP, and one specific component of this project is about SMEs and is about to manage the help desk. So what is the Africa IP SME Helpdesk? This service, it's a service actually for the European Union companies that would like to invest in Africa and protect at the same time their intellectual property rights. It's a service funded by the European Union, so all the services that we offer are completely free of charge, and there are mainly three. So we have a helpline, meaning that SMEs or people interested in hearing more about IP in Africa can call us or send us an email, and we will get in touch with them and reply with answers about their questions. Then we offer a series of IP materials that are available on our website for free. And then there are also a big offer of events and training modules that are also available to interested SMEs and partners. So let's see one by one these services very quickly. Let's start with the helpline. The helpline is a free of charge first line IP support service that is provided, again, as I said, for free. You can contact us by email, by telephone, on our website, and we can answer all your questions about IP and Africa, relating, for example, about the scope of protection, the different protection routes, the good practices, and so on. And of course, it's confidential, personal, and we try to stick to the point. So the main characteristic of the service is that is very fast. So our compromise is to answer within 3 working days. And I truly recommend you to contact us because it's a service that we offer for free, and we can get you in contact with IP experts that could assess you on your doubts about the protection of your intangible assets in Africa. The second service that I already mentioned are the online resources. Our website is structured in different sections where you will find several documents on IP and Africa. We have country and sector fact sheets, for example, on all African countries, plus the IP regional organizations. So, for example, if you're interested in Kenya, you can go there and download the country fiche on Kenya and see what is the IP landscape of that country. We have also IP guides. For example, in Kenya, we have more details than the country fish with IP guides specific on certain issues. We have case studies of real companies operating in Africa and that encountered issues and how they solved them and best practices they follow to achieve the objective of protecting their IP rights. And of course, we also have an IP glossary for SMEs because not everybody is an expert. So if you have any doubt on the terminology that we use, it's fully updated and you can find it all, the information available there. This is an example of specific publications that are related I put an example of South Africa and Nigeria today because it's the main subject of the webinar. So on the left side of the screen, for example, is an example of a case study on patents in South Africa. So you'll see there's a background, the actions undertaken, and then the main takeaways at the end of the section for you to have an idea of what companies do and how they overcome the challenges they encountered during their while they're doing their business in Africa. And then on the right side, you'll see just an example of a country fish on Nigeria, where you will see, you will have general information on the IP system of this country. So feel free to go on our website and to download these documents. And then the third service that is also extremely important for us is the training and events part. So we do provide online and on-site training courses to SMEs and multipliers, accelerators, and the stakeholders involved, and that can put us in contact to companies, because our main purpose is to connect with SMEs, to let them know that we exist and that they can get information and useful services from us for free. So we organize sessions like the one we're having today online, but we do it also on site, either both in Europe and in Africa. We also participate in many matchmaking events and trade fairs because I think this is the best way to get in contact with companies and to let them know that we can provide them with some useful services. And also, if any of you is interested in receiving a specific training on IP, we can also discuss. If you have a company and you want to train your employees, for example, on specific aspects, we are also available to offer this service. We can discuss and we can do it again for free. So we are available for you, and this is an example of the webinars and activities that we are going to have in the coming days. I would like to focus, first of all, on something that is very important for us and that is happening tomorrow, the 28th of November. It is an online workshop that in which we are participating in. Is not directly organized by the Africa Helpdesk, but the UIPO and my project will participate in this workshop about the African Union EU Innovation Agenda. What am I talking about? So, as you may know, the EU Innovation Agenda, was adopted in July 2023 and represents, let's say, the backbone of the cooperation in the field of research and innovation between Africa and the European Union, because it aims to create positive impact on the ground, such as tools for agricultural use, climate services, food systems, and transformation. And this innovation agenda is based basically on 4 priority areas that you can see highlighted here in color: on public health, green transition, innovation and technology, and capacity for science. There are also some cross-cutting issues that I haven't added here for time reasons, so we don't have time to talk about this too long today. But the event that we are going to attend tomorrow, this online workshop, will be organized in the framework of the implementation of the innovation agenda, and it will be totally focused on intellectual property rights that, as you know, are like a pivotal condition and a driver for innovation. So there would be a whole day workshop. You will be hearing from panelists and experts on IP, patent, IP attorneys and stakeholders. There will be also the opportunity for networking online. I will be sharing later on in the chat the link for registration. We will be also there tomorrow, and I recommend that participants in this webinar today that are interested in IP could also register to the event happening tomorrow. And then the next webinar that we are going to organize is the one that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, and that will conclude the cycle on IPR enforcement. So on the 13th of December, stay tuned, because there will be the last webinar on IPR enforcement that will focus on custom recordal in West Africa. That will be all from my side today. These are the contacts of our help desk. As I mentioned, you can call us, you can email us, and we will be answering you with information that you can get for free. We also have plenty of social media channels that you can follow us, and they can follow up for more information and to stay tuned on the events that we are going to organize. Let me stop sharing my presentation. Thank you very much for the help. And now, if there are no questions, I would like to give the floor to our main speakers today. Let me introduce them first of all. We have again today with us Nora and Marius that will be discussing, as mentioned, issues on counterfeit goods and e-commerce sites in Nigeria and South Africa. Both Nora and Marius are specialized IP lawyers at IP Vocate Africa, that is based in Mauritius. Nora is a lawyer focusing on anti-counterfeiting matters in Africa and specializes in enforcement of intellectual property rights. She also worked in South Africa and the Gambia previously, and she holds a doctorate in law from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. On the other hand, Marius Schneider is the founder and director of IP Vocate Africa, that is a law firm focusing on the protection, management, and enforcement of IP rights all over the African continent. And he assists clients in setting up and enforcing their IP strategies across the whole continent. He also co-authored the publication on enforcement and intellectual property rights in Africa and serves on the INTA Anti-Counterfeiting Committee, the UIPO Observatory, and the ECTA Anti-Counterfeiting Committee. So I will stop now here, and I will be looking forward to hearing from them. I'll give you the floor. Guys, please feel free to entertain our audience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And yes, indeed, as you have said it, we are lawyers, Nora and I, and we do indeed assist clients throughout Africa in their enforcement matters. And in practice, we have a lot of clients that have problems with counterfeit goods sold online or offline, but we're speaking only about online today in Nigeria and South Africa. And we also, that's physical goods, huh? And we also do quite a lot of work for right holders who hold copyrights and who have issues in relation to enforcement of their copyright against streaming services and the like, both in Nigeria and South Africa. So this is something we are very acquainted with, and it's, I think, going to be very interesting to talk about it today. Now, when we are talking about Africa, it's interesting to keep in mind, and this is a general introduction, that Africa is very quick to adopt new technologies. Huh? Why? Because Africa doesn't have the power of the past technologies, and sometimes they can go really very quick into new technology. I'll give you an example. I think an example is always better than 200 words. In South Africa, if you are driving on the tollway, on the highway where you need to pay for driving on some of them, then every car there is equipped with a little transponder that allows the toll gate to automatically take money from you and from the driver for driving on that toll gate road. And, it's amazing that when I go back to Europe for summer holidays and I drive through France, Spain, I still see these huge queues at the péage, toll gates. In Africa, they just went one step further. And the same with regards to banking services. I would like to say that in Mauritius and other countries across Africa, oftentimes consumers really jump immediately from the checkbook to mobile payments with their mobile phones. But, unfortunately, not in every country. But, when Africa decides to move forward, then very often it's a very quick step and a very quick adoption. So now let's look at what is the situation in relation to e-commerce platforms, generally speaking, in Africa before we dive into the possibilities that are available in Nigeria and then South Africa. Now, it is estimated that by 2025, there will be over 500 million e-commerce users in Africa. That is an annual growth rate of about 17%. So it is estimated that there will be 500 million e-commerce users in 2025, 2 years from now. Today already, there are 631 active marketplaces in Africa. We will look a little bit in detail at what are these marketplaces later on in the presentation, but there's already 631 that are around. Most of the products that are sold online are, for the time being, fashion and electronic products. And who says fashion and electronic products says, of course, also the problem of counterfeit, because we all know that these are products where you have a very high prevalence of counterfeit products in the markets. And this being said, the revenue for grocery and personal care products is growing fast, and they are also entering, into the field of e-commerce. And probably that the pandemic has, fueled this interest of consumers to use e-commerce platforms for grocery and other food products and the like. Certainly in Mauritius, we have seen a very steady growth due to the pandemic and due to the very strict lockdowns that we had in force here. Now, all in all, it can be said that in 2027, there is a forecasted revenue of more than $82 billion in the e-commerce field. So that sounds like, quite good, but unfortunately, today, Africa is still only less than 1% of the total e-commerce economy in the world. So Africa is neglectable, unfortunately, if I may say so, when it comes to e-commerce worldwide, certainly in terms of figures. And the question is now, Nora, why is that so? Why is it, so slow to develop in Africa?
Yes, thank you, Marius. Hello, everyone. So there are a lot of reasons why e-commerce is being slow to develop in Africa, but we decided to focus on what we believe to be the 3 main reasons. So one of the reasons we wanted to highlight is the availability of internet. So in 2021, it was estimated that there was only 33% of the population on the continent that had access to the internet. And of course, if you have low access to the internet, you're going to have an even lower percentage of people actually participating in e-commerce. Also, the issue that internet remains very expensive in Africa. On average, it was calculated that it takes 6.5% of an African monthly income to get 2 gig of mobile data. To put this in perspective, 2 gig of mobile data allows you to watch 4 hours of a low quality movie on Netflix, for example. So you can imagine, since 6.5% to watch what will be around the equivalent of 2 movies in low quality is quite a high percentage of the monthly income for someone. As an example, in Asia Pacific region, for the same amount of internet, that would be on average 1.7% of a monthly income. And in Europe, that would be 0.5% of a monthly income only. So you can see that the price is a deterrent factor to being online, to having access to the internet. At the same time, Africa is not a country, it's a continent made up of many countries, and it's important to recognize that there is a vast disparity in the availability of internet among the countries. So we're talking of an average 33% penetration rate across a continent, but there are 20 countries in Africa that have an internet penetration rate of over 50%. So that's nearly half, I mean, that's not nearly half, but I mean, that's quite a lot of countries, like 20 countries over 54. I mean, if you look at the countries like Morocco, Seychelles, Egypt, they have more than 80% penetration rate of the internet in the country. To go back to the countries that are of interest to our presentation, where we know today, South Africa is 6th in the African continent with regard to internet penetration rate, with 72.3%, while Nigeria is 17 with 55.4%. So both of them, so Nigeria is above the 50% mark, while South Africa is above the 70% mark. And I think we need to remember what Mary just said in the beginning, that Africa is very fast adopter of technology. And we can expect that there will be a very fast increase in the internet penetration rate in the next few years. If you look at Africa, the internet penetration rate across the region between 2010 and 2011, that is in only 11 years, it has grown from 9.6% to 33%. So that's a huge increase. And we can expect there's going to be maybe in the next 10 years, an even greater growth in the penetration rate of internet. The second issue, Thank you. And why am I saying that will be an even greater penetration rate of the internet is because there is a big move in terms of the level of the internet infrastructure in Africa. There's a lot of submarine cable connections that is being laid out, that is being improved. And of course, with better internet infrastructure, that means costs of internet services will go down. There'll be stronger competition in the market and lower risk of having internet access disruptions. And I think that will really help in growing the internet penetration rate. So the second issue, which we found that was really limiting the adoption of e-commerce by Africans, is the availability of bank accounts, is being actually banked. Online payment, because most of these websites require you to do online payment, remains a challenge. There's only 10% of the population of Africans on the continent that have access to a debit card, and only 2% have access to a credit card. So you can see that payment methods is really a limiting factor. 57% of Africans, that's 360 million adults in the region, do not have any kind of bank account, including what Maurice mentioned before, mobile money accounts. So you can imagine if 57% of the population is not banked at all, e-commerce is a completely different, e-commerce is just not possible. There is, however, a strong move toward financial inclusion in Africa, including through mobile money, which we mentioned briefly and which we'll touch on again. So again, we have a low availability of credit cards, of debit card, of banking access, but financial inclusion is going to be moving forward in the next years in Africa, including through very innovative mechanisms that have been put in place by Africans for Africans. If you look at adoption of mobile money, for example, it's incredible. And you can see that this is really going to be pushing availability, accessibility to bank accounts. So the third factor which we thought was really a challenge in terms of e-commerce is a postal reliability. And that includes a need for a precise address. In a lot of websites, you need to put proper street's name, you need to put signage, you need a postal code, etc. And these things are not available in every single African country. I'm going to take the example of Mauritius. Postal codes, the use of postal code is still very new in Mauritius. And I mean, most of us don't actually even use it, but only use it if we have to order something online. But we wouldn't give somebody our postal code if they needed to send us something, like if if you need to send a family something or tell someone, send us a card, we mostly use it for e-commerce. And it only came in very recently. And in a lot of countries, we're still very far from proper street name, a proper number. So that really limits the availability of the e-commerce. And of course, there's an issue of road infrastructure. Somebody that is ordering something that lives in a rural area, will he actually receive what he has ordered? Or is he simply paying and the package will be lost? Or the package will take months to reach to his house. So there's all these issues, the challenges to why people are a bit reluctant to use e-commerce. And of course, until and unless postal services become like a basic service, if we don't improve the infrastructure logistics as to how the goods are going to be able to be transported, and if we don't take care of how we're going to be able to do returns, like cross-border returns, which is also a major issue, then of course, how much people are using e-commerce is going to be an issue, because again, I'm taking an example of Mauritius, often returning an item will be more expensive than the item itself, or cost more than when you paid for the service, the delivery fee to have it delivered. Returning it is often more expensive. So all of this really limit the adoption of e-commerce in Africa. Chris?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting. Yeah, I think we have to have a quick look at the biggest e-commerce retailers that do exist in Africa. Number one is clearly Jumia. Jumia was founded in Nigeria and has now ventured out to other countries. It's available in Tunisia, South Africa, Senegal, Morocco, Kenya, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Egypt, and Algeria, as well as Uganda. So, from a Nigerian startup company, they have developed into a pan-African technology company. And they are available in all these countries, yet, as you can see, the monthly website traffic remains rather limited, with 32 million users, although they are spanning all these countries. Then there is other, commerce retailers in Africa. In South Africa, there is Take A Lot. They have also been created there in South Africa, and they have now a traffic of 10 million monthly visitors. Amazon has decided to set up in the Middle East and North Africa. So this is an Amazon subsidiary, servicing these countries. Probably these countries are easier to work for Amazon that heavily relies on postcodes, street names, and of course, in the Middle East, you have postcodes and street names, and the same in many North African countries, which are probably more developed than sub-Saharan African countries, where, as Nora rightly pointed out, addresses are still, en face de la banque un tel, facing bank so-and-so or another landmark. So, this is probably why Amazon entered into the North Africa and Middle East with Souk. Then there's Konga, also a Nigerian e-commerce website with 3 million monthly visitors. There is Budabai in South Africa. And there is Kilimall in Kenya with a very limited number of users yet. But as Nora said, this may well change.
So Marisa just, as you have seen from what Marisa just pointed out, there's a lot of African companies that are actually big in Africa. I mean, if you remove, I think, Souk, most of them are African-based companies. And I think that's because, faced with the challenges that we've mentioned before, those African companies were able to come up with solutions that are really focused on the market, and that kind of take into consideration the challenges that Africans have to use e-commerce. For example, we've talked about the difficulty of accessing internet. One thing that one of the e-commerce platforms have done is that they use a middleman. So that means that if you don't have access to a middleman, you can go in a store and you place your order with a gentleman that will show you what is available on the website. The person will help you navigate the website if needed. Or if you don't want to navigate the website, you can tell them You can tell the middleman, what do you want? And they can show you what is available on the website. So that really removes the whole issue of, I don't have access to the internet, or maybe I don't feel confident using the internet. So they've started to use middlemen. Over e-commerce website, what they've done, they've actually printed physical catalogs. So that means that because people like seeing what they're buying, so they print out physical catalogs of what is on offer, and then the seller, usually it's in a store, so the person that is in charge will then order from the catalog, from what was chosen in the catalog, and the person will order online. So really seeing that people don't have access to the internet, what can we do so that they can still have access to the platform? One of the things which those African-based e-commerce websites have done is really to set up pickup stations. We've talked about the difficulty of posts. We've talked about the difficulty of the roads. What they've done is that they use pickup stations across towns and villages. So instead of being delivered at your door, you can go and pick up your parcel, your order at a particular shop, for example. We've also seen new modes of delivery. In a lot of places, it's hard to get a delivery truck to go in some villages because the road is not good enough for the delivery truck. Well, they've started to use bicycles because they found that it was the easiest way to get the order to the person. But also, there's a lot of talks about using drones to deliver orders in Africa. I'm not too sure there's a company that is already doing it for like e-commerce orders, but I know there's a lot of talk about it. And also one big thing that has helped with e-commerce and which the African-based companies have been very good at is looking at the issue of credit cards and debit cards, realizing that a lot of people are not banked, but still have a means to pay and therefore accepting cash on delivery, or because a lot of people in Africa are using mobile money, they have started to accept mobile money. There are around 8 countries in Africa where you have 20% of adults that only bank through mobile money. That is, they have no other bank account. So if you do not cater for this population that only has mobile money, then you lose customers. So really, I think we can really see a preeminence of the African firms in the e-commerce space simply because they have looked at the challenges that the African customer have and have figured ways to go around those challenges.
Yeah, and actually, I guess we Africans, Nora, we like to see the product arrive at our place, and sometimes, as you say, can be a very remote village, and then pay once the product arrives, either with cash or with mobile money. So that makes absolute sense to use that business model. Well, of course, Africans have been also smart around that, and so another reason why there's not a lot of e-commerce activity yet is also because there's other organizations, So I have been working a little bit on a farming project in Senegal in the last few weeks. And for example, there's women that come by and bring food to the farm so that the workers who work on the farm, they can buy the ready-made food from these women who sell it, as I may say so, off their heads, because that's how they bring it. And also, it's possible to order products for steel bars or whatever for building. You can just order them and they will bring them along and you pay on arrival again. So, the African reality is a little bit different from the European reality, and it's important, for everybody to understand that. But I think we made that point very clear. Nora, thank you. And we can now delve into Nigeria and the e-commerce situation there. I would like to say, first of all, that Nigeria is the #1 economy in Africa, together with South Africa. That's why Nigeria today is ranked before South Africa, but might as well change because, situation is not so easy. But together they are really the #1 economies in Africa. Nigeria is also a very interesting country because they have 200 million consumers there, 200 million Nigerians living there and consuming there. But Nigeria has also a very high prevalence of counterfeit goods. There's a lot of counterfeits on the market there. in all areas. So be it pharmaceutical products, be it food products, there is a lot of counterfeits around in Nigeria. Now, when it comes to e-commerce, the revenue that can be expected from e-commerce this year is around $9 billion US, and there's quite some growth ahead because by 2027 it's expected to grow to $14 billion US. And it is expected that 43 million users will use e-commerce in Nigeria by 2027. That may sound a lot compared certainly to some smaller European countries or even smaller African countries, but it still means that Nigeria does not, even in 2027, unfold its full potential because, as I told you, Nigeria has 200 million inhabitants, and so actually 200 million potential users of e-commerce platforms. Okay, so in Nigeria, there's three dominant e-commerce platforms active there. We already talked about Jumia, so they are born and founded in Nigeria and have ventured now out of Nigeria in other countries, as I already said. The site on which you can reach them is jumia.com.ng for Nigeria. And as we already said, they have a revenue of approximately $22 million US in 2021. Behind Jumia is slot.nigeria and ajebomarket.com with around $6 million US in revenues in 2021. So that is the situation there in, as it comes to e-commerce. And now what are the possibilities of fighting against counterfeit there?
So, for example, so how is a person liable? So under the Cybercrimes Act, it is an offense in Nigeria where a person uses the business name, the trademark, or any other registered mark without the authority of the owner. So that is an offense under the Cybercrimes Act.
I think there is a little issue. Yeah. Let's wait a few seconds if she comes back.
Yeah, she will surely come back.
Yeah.
That's the problem in Africa. I have always my telephone next to me with a mobile hotspot so that I can jump on the mobile hotspot to get access again. Here she is.
I'm sorry, I just
no problem. Start again because for the recording.
Oh, sorry. So very practically, if you have somebody that is using your trademark without your authorization in a domain name in Nigeria, and it is followed by the .ng sign, what can you do? So you can lodge a complaint with what is called the Nigeria Internet Registration Association. So you can file a complaint with what simply called the NIRA, and the NIRA will you will have I will call it an administrative procedure before the NIRA that will allow whether to suspend, to cancel, or to transfer the domain. I'd recommend, if you find any counterfeit, any website selling counterfeit goods that is reproducing your trademark with the .ng, to go to the NIRA, to use that NIRA dispute resolution mechanism, because it is very fast. So under the NIRA, you might be appointed an arbitrator, and the arbitrator is required to pass a decision on the matter within 60 days of the commencement of the proceedings. In exceptional cases, it can be extended by 30 days. So you can see that in only a maximum of 90 days, 3 months, you will be able to find a decision, to reach a a solution and a decision. So for me, if you are finding any if you're finding any country, any counterfeit, any website selling counterfeit goods with your trademark, with a .ng, use the NERA system, because that's the easiest, that's the quickest, and that's very cost-effective as well. Liability of e-commerce platform, let's say marketplaces that are selling counterfeit goods, that are proposing counterfeit goods for sale by other sellers, that's a bit more complicated. So I'm really talking about platforms where anyone can join as a seller, and then the e-commerce platform is just putting up these ads up, and people can go through the e-commerce platform to purchase those products. So that's a little bit more complicated. And why I'm saying this is because the law in Nigeria doesn't say clearly if the e-commerce platform is liable or if the e-commerce platform is not liable. Like, there's no strict law or case law on this matter that we could say. So that makes it a little bit more complicated. But at the same time, I cannot oops, I would like to, can you go to the next slide, Marius, for me? So there's no specific law that's regulating whether the e-commerce platform is responsible. At the same time, you will see that very often those e-commerce websites will post terms and conditions that limit their liability. They will say, we are not responsible for counterfeit goods that are being sold on our website. But my question remains, is that enough? Is it simply enough to say we are not responsible and to allow people to sell counterfeit goods through your platform? So one of the things which could maybe be used in Nigeria is to act in tort. And it is to say, if you do not set up efficient measures, if a platform does not set up efficient measures or filtering tools to prevent the sale of counterfeits on their website, and if it is benefiting from the sales, for example, by gaining ads, by gaining more eyeballs on the website, when can they, in fact, be held liable because they are being negligent? So for me, it is difficult to imagine that we would be in a situation in Nigeria where a platform, once you've informed them that they are counterfeits and they are neglecting to remove them, that there wouldn't be a possibility to go against them on the basis of the law of tort. But again, as I say, there's no specific law in Nigeria regarding those e-commerce platforms and their liability. And there's no case law as well. So this will remain a question until either the legislature passes a law or if the courts decide decide in that manner. But to me, I cannot imagine that simply limiting our liability would be enough to remove any kind of liabilities if they are informed of the availability of counterfeit goods on their platform. Now regarding the liability of the sellers of the counterfeits, for example, those that are either advertising the counterfeited goods on those online platforms, so they have an account, so they're the sellers, or people that have created their own website and they are selling counterfeit goods on their own website. So that part is very settled in Nigerian law, and I think right owners will find that there's that they have good laws in place in Nigeria that do allow them to go against sellers of counterfeits. There's a traditional, what I would call IP legislation, which is related to Trademarks Act, Merchandise Mark Act, and these, there's traditional IP legislation that are applicable to brick and mortar sale of counterfeits can also apply to online sale of counterfeits. So you can rely on that as a right owner. But at the same time, there's also the Cybercrime Act again, and that will apply specifically to online sale of counterfeits. So there are two provisions of a law that you could most likely use against them. The first one is where you say, where the law considers that it's an offense to send a misleading electronic message with intent to defraud, where reliance on the facts of the message will cause damage or loss. So we can argue that when somebody is offering to you a counterfeit product, you are acting on the basis that you're purchasing this product because you believe it is a genuine product, because it bears the trademark of a right owner that you trust, for example, and therefore by selling you a counterfeit product, there is an intention to defraud you. There's an intention of causing you damage or loss because you're paying more, because you're not getting the quality, the real product for which you are actually paying. And the second section, I think, which could be used again against online counterfeiters, is to say you are using a business name, you're using a trademark without the authority of the owner, with the intention of interfering with the owner's use. That is, with the intention of gaining customers that would, in all likelihood, have purchased a genuine product from the right owner if they had known. So I believe in Nigeria, the liability of sellers themselves, that should not be an issue, and there are good laws in place, and the sections are well developed, and there is also, there is also an experience on the ground, especially with regard to the traditional IP legislation, with the Trademark Act, Merchandise Mark Act, that we have experience already. They have a case already that relates to counterfeit brick and mortar sales, and that can also apply to online sales.
Thank you, Nora. Yeah, and so what are the practical takeaways from this talk about Nigeria? Our practical advice is that right holders should, of course, as they always do, monitor online marketplaces. When they find suspicious products, they should ascertain that they are really counterfeit. Sometimes that can be done from the price point. Sometimes the price is not right. Let's say a luxurious perfume is sold extremely cheap. Well, then you already know that there's something wrong. Sometimes also the other characteristics of the products may indicate that there's a counterfeit. For example, there is no, let's say, 150 milliliters of a luxurious perfume, because there's only 50 and 100 milliliters, so that can already be an indication. So, it's up to right holders to monitor, to ascertain that the product is really counterfeit. And if there's doubt, then it's always advisable to do a test purchase in Nigeria. If it comes out that the product is counterfeit, our recommendation is to write a cease and desist letter to the platform and to request the removal of the product. Very often that will actually happen. I will talk about Jumia in particular in a few minutes. Still, maybe in relation to the counterfeits, sometimes counterfeiters use pictures of genuine products. So they will even use pre-written pictures, or what may be copyrighted pictures of an actual product, so made by the right holder in order to promote the product. So that it can happen that these pictures are used. Then in Nigeria, under Nigerian law and practice, we have been advised that this could also be a copyright infringement to use pictures of authentic products on which the right holder may have copyright to use that for the promotion and sale of counterfeit. So that's maybe interesting to keep in mind, and also to consider in your cease and desist letter. Now, if there's large quantities involved, or if litigation is considered, then certainly the next step to go is to do a search on the company that is posing for sale on the online platform at the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is the local company register, so that you obtain further details on the alleged infringer. And you can also, as a right holder, call on the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission to ask them for help, and also on further details on the alleged infringer. So this Consumer Protection Commission is quite proactive in Nigeria, and yeah, it always is a good idea to involve them as far as possible. Now, interesting point from our practical experience, we can tell you that Jumia, in particular, is quite open to cooperate with right holders. They do not want to go through litigation. They do very much prefer to cooperate with right holders. And for a few of our clients, we have actually discussed an MOU with them, whereby our clients did disclose some information on their authentic products to Jumia, and Jumia did then undertake to police their own platform by eliminating potentially counterfeit goods, and also by alerting our clients to possible counterfeit listings if they had a doubt. To be very particular and concrete, what happened is that in the MOU, we gave them some information on how to recognize counterfeits. As I said, the example of the luxurious perfumes that only exists in certain sizes. Well, that's very easy for Jumia to police, and that's what they are doing for some of our clients. And so this is quite important information to understand that, you can enter into an agreement or an MOU with Jumia to get their assistance and cooperation rather than having to negotiate. So that's the good news. And that concludes Nigeria. We're now moving to South Africa, Nora.
Yes, so South Africa, as you will see from the figures right now, South Africa is very much advanced in terms of e-commerce. South Africa has passed the $2.7 billion milestone in 2022 regarding online retail. They're expecting $12.29 billion of revenue by 2025. So that's a big growth being projected for South Africa. And as you can see, there are more than 5,000 businesses in South Africa with a turnover of more than $5,400. So we can see that there's big players that are listed there, like Takealot, Superbalist, Makro, Woolworths, Biddelbide. But there's also a lot of other smaller players that are still smaller, but still good-sized players of online commerce in South Africa. So in South Africa, ISP liability is much more clear because there is the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, which is very clear, that says that ISPs in South Africa are not liable for solely providing access to the internet and transmitting the data. They are not under an obligation to monitor the data which you're transmitting, or stores, that they don't have to monitor the source, or they don't have to actively seek facts or circumstances that would indicate that their services are being used to sell counterfeit products. So that is very clear on the liability of ISP providers in South Africa. But what South African ISPs must do is that they must perform a takedown of the website upon receiving a bona fide complaint of infringing content being displayed. So if you know that a particular website is displaying counterfeit products, your counterfeit products, you can write to the ISP to have the website taken down, and that would already address big chunk of your problem, especially if the store is only available online. So the service provider, the ISP provider, is obliged in the South African law to act expeditiously to either remove or disable the access, because if it doesn't, it will lose the immunity it has as an ISP provider. So it should be noted that it's not you do have a takedown notice that is available, but that doesn't prevent the court to order the ISP to terminate or prevent unlawful activity. So usually you would start by writing to the ISP if you know there's a website that is offering for sale counterfeit products. But if the ISP says it's not responding at all to you, so maybe one of the ways to go around it would be to go through the courts, and the courts have the power to order the ISP to terminate or prevent the unlawful activity. So that was for the ISP provider's liability. Another thing which you might use as well, say, for example, you have a domain name with a registration .za that is infringing your rights, your trademark rights, your trademark right. What can you do? You can file a complaint with what is called the SAIIPL, with the South African Institute of Intellectual Property Law. So let's say you have a domain name that reproduces your trademark, your registered trademark in South Africa, or even your trademark that is not registered, but that is well known, then you can file a complaint before the institute so that the domain name, the website is taken down. So that would apply for any domain name with the .za. So any domain name that is considered as taking unfair advantage of rights of another party will be liable to go under the institute dispute mechanism. So one of the advantages of going through the South African Institute is that you will be able to conclude that dispute within 2 or 3 months, and that you'll be using online procedures. So of course, that's very cost efficient, and that's very fast in terms of how quickly you can resolve the dispute. If you go for court, for example, it would take you significantly longer to resolve your dispute. So that is an option if you have a domain name with a .za sign that is infringing your trademark and that is offering for sale counterfeit goods, because that's a good way, especially if it's only online website. If you can get rid of a website, you really can take care of the issue of the counterfeit goods being sold on the website.
Okay, and then to conclude, we'd like to have a quick look at what about the seller's liability? So what can be undertaken against the seller of counterfeit goods on an online platform? Well, the good news is that under South African law and practice, the online sale of counterfeit goods is actually assimilated to the physical sale under the Counterfeit Goods Act. So in other words, online sale is assimilated to brick and mortar sale of counterfeit goods. And that means that all the measures that are available regarding physical sales apply also to online sales. So in South Africa, there is a very good system whereby right holders can file complaints with an inspector, a market inspector, who then obtains a warrant of search and seizure, conducts a raid at the premises, and seizure of the actual infringing or allegedly infringing goods. And so all of this is also available to online sellers, and so their liability here is clearly easily established. Also, good news, in South Africa, it is possible to file a customs recordal. South Africa is one of the few, let's say handful, a little bit more than a handful of countries in Africa where you can file an efficient customs recordal, and where then customs will watch over your IP rights. That is, by the way, not as such possible in Nigeria. It is possible to conclude some kind of memorandum of understanding with customs in Nigeria, but not a straightforward customs recordal. So this is a clear advantage of the South African system, because we all know that customs are the rights holders' best ally when it comes to fighting counterfeit goods. So that's for the seller's liability. And then I'd like to finish off with some practical advice. We do advise our clients, once counterfeit products are uncovered online, is to try and get as much information as possible. Try to ascertain that they are really counterfeit, as I've already said in the context of Nigeria. See prices, other characteristics, whether there's clear indications, is the infringer using copyright protected pictures and the like. Try to uncover as much information as possible. And then next step in South Africa, take advantage of the Counterfeit Goods Act and the possibilities there with market inspectors and the like, but also the possibility to obtain court orders compelling third parties to disclose information on the origin of the counterfeit goods and the identities of the persons involved. So that's very important. And yeah, all the other measures are also available. Takedown notices, cease and desist letters, and the like. Nora, would you like to add something here on this particular side?
No, not on this one. I think you said everything.
That's it. So this concludes our presentation. We are very happy. Thank you for joining us for this. You can see there is still, a lot of room for development there in Africa. Both in terms of market, so there's still a lot of market shares to be taken and a lot of consumers to be gained for online commerce, but also, as we've seen, it's not 100% clear what actions can be taken. So there's also a lot of development still for, legal changes and legal developments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nora and Marius, for the very broad presentation and also for sharing the tips and advice on both economies that are indeed very relevant for our audience. Let me open the floor for a few questions, very few because we are already running out of time, but I see there is a raised hand from the audience. Please, we are here to listen to your question. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Sanjay. Thank you very much for the nice webinar, and a special thanks to Marius. I'm Sanjay from Oman, Muscat, Oman.
We cannot hear the question.
Yeah, Sanjay is coming from Oman.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have any particular question, but I would like to thank you for the nice webinar and very interesting facts, what we learned today. And thanks, Marius. Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments, Sanjay. Maybe I can ask a question just for you. I don't know if we believe that someone is selling counterfeited goods on an online platform using photos of what we believe is a genuine product. What should be done in this case?
If I may, so the first steps is confirm if the products are actually counterfeits, because they are using genuine products. So based on the pictures themselves, you will not be able to know. So first step is to confirm that they are counterfeits. Usually you can find it out by maybe asking more photos from a seller, asking more questions from the sellers, or you can do a test purchase, just to kind of be able to find out whether these are really counterfeits. Once it is confirmed that the goods are counterfeit, it is possible to request the takedown of the listing of the platform, or to contact the seller. So what we would advise is, if you're using genuine product, is really to contact the seller to be sure that they are actually selling counterfeits, because you don't want to expose yourself to claims that you are unfairly threatening someone of selling counterfeit goods, or that you're having recourse in a, let's say, you're having recourse to a takedown notice mechanism from the platform, but you're doing it without cause. So you want to be sure of what you're doing. And once you're sure what you're doing, then you can start either asking for a takedown notice, or maybe if you want to uncover more, investigate more on the seller and try to use a bit of investigators, or maybe you can go to court, etc. But just the first aspect, the first part is really ensure that these are really counterfeits. And Marius mentioned as well the issue of copyright. In some countries, it will be possible to go on the basis of copyright, and maybe it will be easier for you as a right owner. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on how the copyright law is structured in the country, and how maybe it's easier to go under copyright than it would be to go under trademark enforcement. So that depends on the country. It depends on the legislation, but that's a possibility.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nora, for the clarification.